One voice evolving. That's the name. 3 words that became a platform, a community, and a calling. But somewhere along the way, across 100 episodes, 2.5 years, and more honest conversations than most people have in a lifetime, these 3 words condense into something else entirely. Ove. 3 letters that became bigger than their name. As I'm sure you figured out, I'm not Kim. I'm the producer behind the mic, and I've been in the room for all of it. And before she steps into wave 2, the next 100 conversations, I wanted to take a moment to tell you what I witnessed. Because every story deserves a witness. And this one's been building quietly, faithfully, season by season, long before anyone knew what it was becoming. And what I found is that hidden inside Ove were 4 words that told the whole story. Words that had been there all along. Welcome. This is episode 100 of One Voice Evolving, the podcast. And this one belongs to her. Chapter 1, Reclaiming Joy. The first word was move. Not a strategy, not a content calendar, a decision. Because Kim was done staying quiet, and that was enough to begin. Season 1 wasn't about building a brand. It was about telling the truth out loud and seeing what happened when she did. She moved before she knew where she was going. And that movement, raw, unscripted, uncomfortable, real, and relatable, became the foundation everything else was built on. Now join us for a few highlights from pivotal conversations on the podcast.
Here's the key. We all have privilege. We all have privilege, whether it's the color of our skin, whether it's we're able-bodied, whether we're of sound mind, whether it's socioeconomic status, we all have some kind of privilege. And somewhere along the way, that's gotten twisted because I think, I don't want to get into politics here, but often it does turn into right-left. Both extremes, in my mind, we have created this, and that's what we're seeing. The fighting is the extremes. It's not the people in the middle, it's the extremes. And what's happened is we've thrown things around. Oh, you're privileged. How am I supposed to react to that? That's that anger. That's that fight against, right? We all have privilege. And yet, some of those are different. The way we react, the way that the system is set up, some of those privileges advantage us in different ways than other privileges. Okay? And so, to equate a racial privilege with a socioeconomic privilege, you're equating apples and oranges. It's not the same
and yet
thing.
it's oftentimes assumed or presumed
Exactly.
that if you have white privilege, you also have economic privilege.
Bingo.
Or if you don't.
And then they invited me to come into the room. I was one of 2 white people, invited into this sacred circle where this is when I left the patriarchal cult in my 40s. I graduated myself. In 2010 is when my priestess training began. And that put me on a path to really examine the internalized patriarchy. Now, when we look at our history, if we look back, there's a wonderful book called The Alphabet versus the Goddess that looks at every single culture across the world when the alphabet was brought in. Now, you and I are probably the most familiar with Moses coming down off the mount with tablets inscribed in stone, that thou shalt have no graven images and no other gods to be worshipped before me, and all of this. Well, it was the first record of the alphabet, right, in that culture. And what you see is across the world, as the alphabet is introduced and people have to begin to read, the left brain becomes dominant. And all of a sudden, people across cultures begin to be willing to kill each other for their beliefs, not for land, not for women, for their beliefs.
My unique background brings a diverse set of experience and perspectives to this work, and my willingness to tackle uncomfortable topics is what sets our podcast apart. We come at it with respect and with humility and with a curiosity to learn more, and nobody is growing as much as I am from having these conversations. If you don't listen to one other podcast in our series, this is the one that will get your feet started on the path to action that makes a difference in our lifetime. So please join us as we are One Voice Evolving, collectively and individually, in 2024. One Voice Evolving is a racial equity podcast that explores issues related to DEI and reclaims the joy. We bring on guests who are raw, real, and relatable, and well-versed on their topics related to racial equity, expertise, activism, and community leaders, to pull back the curtain so that you can see from our guests what it's like to work in the DEI space to advance racial equity in our lifetime, in our communities, in our culture, while reclaiming the joy of inclusion.
I listen, because in listening, like one of the principles of the book, listening is being prepared to be changed by what you hear. And so I listen, and I listen to hear, because you can hear if this person is true, if this person is authentic, even not having all the answers. But can you hear that they really mean it? And listen, because I think for a lot of us, we listen to rebut. We listen, waiting for our turn to because we disagree, and so we're like, we're ready. We're gonna let them finish, but we ready. We got it, right? And instead, I listen for heart. True story. I was talking with someone, and it was a white woman, and we were talking about, we disagreed on Roe versus Wade and the overturning, and we just had a real conversation, because I was like, well, I'm a Christian as well, because she was really leading with her faith, and I am like, me and Jesus, we tight. So, so I was listening. And when she said something like, well, I believe all life is valuable. I was like, oh my God, I'm so glad you said that. Because I believe that we should value each other's lives. I said, matter of fact, I said, I'm just curious to see what you think about Black Lives Matter. And she got really quiet, and she's like, no, that's not what I mean. I was like, oh, but it's the same thing, right? Like, and she was really upset about Black Lives Matter. Also in our book, we have a chapter, why isn't it all lives matter? So I was like, but let me listen to what is going on with you not thinking that Black Lives Matter, but yet you want to talk about being pro-life. So we had this hard conversation. We did not end on the same page. We still we still don't agree, but I listened, and I wanted to make sure that I was listening before I just dismissed her opinion, her thought, really her humanity.
No, but how do you gather up your pieces of your heart after it's been shattered, because you did, and come back to the table to decide to love again?
You know, the great thing is when I realized I never stopped loving, I was disappointed. And I think for so often we equate being upset, being disappointed, being angry. We equate that to not loving. And I kept loving. I was just disappointed in the action.
Mostly men. I walked off that stage. I felt so proud. I felt like I had achieved something. I had proven something. You know, I took one for the women's team. Like, I just was so proud of that fact. And out in the parking lot, one of the audience members came up and approached me and asked if he could walk me to my car. And I will never forget the pivotal moment where he grabbed my elbow and he pulled me close and he sexually, verbally assaulted me, implying that, you know, it was my sexuality, that the fact that I looked like a librarian, that turned him on. And that pivotal moment changed everything to me. And I remember that drive home in the car. I opened the windows, tears were flying, and I thought, here I am trying so hard to fit into this mold, to keep myself safe in a man's world. No longer. I'm a woman with breasts. I am a woman with curves. I'm a woman. And that is not going to be a problem any longer. I'm not going to feign being a man to be accepted. So that was a pivotal point for me in my journey. And now I show up as I am. I get tons of criticism for my skin, for my breasts, for my body, for my hair, for my nose. That's okay. We are changing the story. We are changing the story, and we're doing it together.
You're absolutely right. And I'm going to out myself here. I used to be one of those people who thought I was colorblind. That's right. That was me. And that's some racist thinking. It's important for people who look like me and think like I do now to admit that maybe there was a time, or there was a time, when we thought like that. Me admitting that gives other folks who look like me the permission to admit it to themselves too. White folks, we have to educate ourselves and educate each other. It's our responsibility.
I never had the power in the first place. And there's this wake-up call.
Yeah.
That's what's happening now with the war against programs that are simply meant to give people an opportunity, not an unfair advantage, an opportunity. And if it were an unfair advantage, 88% of all CEOs and things would not be cishet white males. If it,
Right.
was unfair, if it was an unfair opportunity, trust me, you would see women, you
Right.
would see Black people, you would see people doing far better. You would see, we'd have openly gay CEOs. We would have, but we don't see that. So
Right.
we just want the opportunity.
No, we see mediocre white men at best being elevated over overachieving, overeducated women, but particularly women of color.
Right.
On the regular. And discounted by white women who are in proximity to those mediocre white men.
Well, but it also sets up, you know, in all due respect to white women, it sets up white women to be in competition with Black women.
Who are willing to come on here and be seen and be a voice and tell their story, pronouns and all, in the face of the flurry of executive orders that are trying to erase their existence. Is anything?
I mean, in theory, I'm safe because I'm retired, but that's just a theory, because who knows what they can mess up next. Lee's in the same boat, so we're
commiserating.
Commiserating, and if anybody can speak truth with minimum retribution, it's those of us who are retired right now. I mean, I've got friends in the federal government who are in the process of losing their jobs.
Right.
Just for being associated with civil rights. And right now, Lee, I don't know how you feel, but I don't feel safe anywhere. I don't feel threatened in many places, but I don't feel safe anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think I don't feel unsafe. I feel a little nervous when I go into a restroom. But really, honestly, it was kind of proven to me the other day, and I don't mean to be crass or whatever, but I always think about myself waiting for a stall or whatever, and then I realized, I came out one day and there's two people waiting for the stall, and nobody was at the urinal. So it's just the fact of, okay, and what are the chances and the odds that both of them were transgender? Not very much.
No.
So, because we're in, when people talk about the percentage of things, and, the top percent of people, they have all this money and all the rest of that. Technically, we're in a 1% too, because only 1% of or less than are transgender. And also the fact of, we're also in 2% of the, we're 2%ers because we have PhDs.
I also want to point out, we're in a small percentage of retired people who are financially stable.
Yeah.
I mean, you've seen my house, I think. I've seen yours.
Nope. You've seen mine, but I haven't seen yours.
And I mean, we're
a little backwards on that. I'm kidding.
well, we've invited you, I think. We won't go there. But the fact of the matter is, Lee and I are here because we have stability that seriously many, if not most, transgender people don't have. We're not worried about keeping our jobs. We're not, things like that, where they need to stay under the radar. So you're talking to two people who are not only small percentages of education and government and trans, but you're talking to a small percentage of people who are trans who don't feel as threatened who feel much more threatened than we do.
Right.
I've got requests coming in. Where can I find a therapist? Where's their support? From people who don't have the support we have.
Yeah.
But what fascinates me about this is you are trans male and trans female, both in federal government, both some military. And my question, and you brought it up, Randy, right at the beginning, when you said you don't feel safe anywhere. And Lee, you said, well, you don't really feel that. And I'm thinking, yes, because you are a clearly presenting white male in the bathroom. And Randy, you may not always be.
No. There's only one person at risk when a trans woman is in the bathroom.
The trans woman.
It's the trans woman.
Isn't that the truth? Yeah.
But Randy.
And not usually from women, but that's shifting too.
Absolutely.
I don't know. I mean, I can't fathom what's going to happen. And you said, anger, fear, what are we going through? Both. Some days I want to get up on my soapbox and just prophesy to these idiots what's going on. And other days I want to close the door and the shades and just hide. And
I'm looking at the people I've talked to from the government so far that I know who've had careers are all, I can't tell who's in denial, them or me. Because they're like, we've seen presidents come and go. It's like the people who didn't vote or the people who voted the other way. The president never really impacts my life. It doesn't matter who it is. It's all crooked. It's all corrupt. It's all rigged. So it doesn't, if it doesn't bother my bubble, it doesn't bother me. It's not my circus, not my monkeys. But when it comes to this government stuff, because this stuff is popping so fast, so extreme, and so pointedly against marginalized voices, particularly, that, but they can't because we have rules. All the bumpers and guidelines you've enjoyed, that I see as it can turn on a dime at any given moment that at any given moment that the Supreme Court
Absolutely.
or the Congress or the whomever, and it'll be gone, or that we'll have some sort of a coup, or I mean, so, and I do tend to go to the dramatic because I don't have a government background. But I'm human resources.
Okay.
But is it reasonable to think, given what we've seen, not from our history or precedent, because there is
Right.
no precedent for this.
Mhm.
This is, well, we'll give him that. He is
Mhm.
uniquely damaging, okay?
Mhm.
With no precedent and the guardrails being ripped away as fast as they are. Do we think that our idea of how the government, it protects us and our retirement and our children and our culture and our rights is gonna hold?
No.
It can't.
No, I
She didn't know when she hit record on episode 1 that her introversion would find its most natural home in these deeper one-on-one conversations. She didn't know the aha moments that she was chasing for herself would really start arriving through other people's stories. She just kept moving. Chapter 2, Finding Resilience. The second word was love. Here's what happens when someone keeps showing up with that level of honesty. People feel it. No, it's not the polished version. It's not the branded, algorithm approved version. It's the real kind, the kind that costs something. Season 2 brought historians, trailblazers, and men who actually got it. And what emerged was a deeper truth. Love and accountability aren't opposites. They're the same thing. Kim built this platform on a radical act. She let guests trust her with their real story, and she trusted them with hers. That's not content strategy. That's love. And here are a few excerpts from powerful moments in season 2.
Here's a fun fact. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And when you're coming in with a DEI proposal or a lean management proposal or a check the box communication training, when the emphasis is on check the box, not do the work, then you get bodies in seats, but you don't get first order change that changes the culture, the water everybody's swimming in. So in this year, I started One Voice Evolving podcast around my particular passion project that I happened into over a year ago under the tutelage of Dr. Nikki Lanier. And I have gone from my first of what has racism cost me to making a legacy plan that I have committed 5 years of my life to, and we're now 15 months into that, to see if I could help move the needle in our culture in the United States beyond checking the box and into actually embracing the inevitable browning of America and our workforce. As all these boomers retire or die off, what you're left with is a multicultural workforce and not the cultural underpinnings of talking to people instead of about them and assuming good intent that's required for any organization to build trust.
So you were asking me about code switching, coding.
Yes, yes. What does that mean to you?
So amongst ourselves, most African American people, well, I mean, we speak English, but we have our own, dare I say, like a patois, and that we speak. And if you had middle class parents or above, they let you know that you should not speak that patois in the presence of someone who's not African American. Not, no, actually not even in the presence of someone who's not African American, in the presence of white people. Because even this, the language, the accent, or whatever you'd like to call it, was never respected as a patois. It translated to white ears as not educated, undesirable, lower class. And it isn't at all. It's just another way of communicating. So my parents, and it wasn't like they were strict or anything, but without anyone ever saying it to you, you became very conscious of, when I'm with my friends and relatives, and even another Black person just standing in line, I can speak one way. But as soon as someone other comes around, I speak the King's English with the King's accent.
You had women who weren't allowed to vote, weren't allowed to speak in public, could not get up on a stage in a town hall and do a public address at this time. But women could meet together, just women. They could have sewing circles. They could read abolitionist newspapers to each other. They could form their own anti-slavery societies. And they had a way of moving information, and consistently through 1830s into the 1860s, keeping the ball rolling. And I believe it was William Lloyd Garrison Jr. who said that, I have to read it. He stated the fact that the abolitionists' women's historical invisibility, they were a great army of silent workers, unknown to fame, and yet without whom the generals were powerless. So all the men who were standing up and pushing for our country to stop the slavery institution, their anchor were the women who were continuing to spread the word. Because
I heard a definition of racism. Actually, I think it was Dr. Nikki Lanier this week who said racism is the fundamental belief that Black and brown people are not fully human, and the systems and policies that are built to further that belief. And I thought, if you could just say to oblivious white women, our audience, do you believe that Black people are fully human? That should stop somebody in their tracks to go, why wouldn't I think that? And then it has an opportunity to uncover some of the biases that we have generationally brought into our bodies that we may not even be conscious of.
You can be very sheltered in your little white world because you don't have any exposure to anybody of color. I had to understand what slavery really was and what people who had slaves, what they really thought of them. And that's when I learned about how they seriously, even the most intelligent people in the 19th century and before that, from the start of our country, how they seriously did not think that these were people. That's because New England, you never saw it. You didn't see it. And so it made you complacent, and then it made you not your problem. And that's just, it's hard to imagine that half the country in the 1800s agreed that slavery was okay. It's really hard to imagine that.
Imagine that half the country today would agree that. Resilience is the key word. And tell me what fuels your resilience? Something fuels resistance, something fuels everything, but how do you keep those fires burning?
You know, I think I'm going to use what you told me yesterday, and I want to share that today because it's still resonating with me today. And that is resilience really comes to us when something becomes personal. And when something becomes personal, it doesn't matter what comes our way. We're gonna smash through that wall because, by damn it, it's personal. And
this kind of love, it doesn't go viral. It goes deep. And deep is exactly where One Voice Evolving was always trying to go. Chapter 3, Resilience Reimagined. The third word was COVE, an appropriate acronym for Circle of Voices Evolving. Something shifted in season 3. The guests got heavier. The personal reckonings got closer to the bone. This was the season Kim started examining not just the systems outside her, but the ones she'd inherited, the ones running quietly in her own bloodline. And the listeners felt it. They stopped just listening. They started showing up. Because the Cove is Kim's private community. It didn't happen because she planned it perfectly. Oh no. It happened because enough people were ready for a room like that to exist. Now enjoy these breakthrough moments from these clips in season 3.
Life is shifting rapidly here, just like it is in our country. And one of the survivor personality things that I have discovered is the ability to pivot. And so pivot we do. How can you tell when a woman has already made a shift in her life? Look at her hair, cause baby, it's all gone. A new hairstyle means something's different. And it is just the outer manifestation of an inward clearing that has happened. So in my case, my personal experience is that we're shifting to deconstructing Kim and all the things that I was taught and raised to be, think, feel, and say, and to put all of my F's in one bag and not give them anymore. So I'm a little less structured and a little more mouthy, if that's even possible. And sometimes I cry, and sometimes I rant, and sometimes I have little nuggets that slip out that people want to remember for the rest of their life. If any of that is for you, then I love that. I love that for you, and I love that for us. What learning or gifting did that bring forward for you?
I love how you phrased that. For me, I was really fortunate. So from the time I was born, my parents made it very clear, you are the best of both worlds. You are a bridge. You are sort of this this translator to two different worlds, and just embrace all of who you are. No, the world might not see you that way, but be confident in who you are within yourself, to know that no matter what comes at you from the world, you know who you are. And I feel fortunate because that's not the experience of everybody who's biracial.
Yes.
With that gift and privilege that I received, I was able to, when I started doing my genealogy, which I started high school, early college, I was pretty young in the genealogy world anyway. The first thing I encountered was just how lopsided my tree was. Right? So on my white mom's side, my tree is huge. I know all of her siblings. I know my grandparents. My grandpa wrote a book called A Journal to My Children, where he had pictures and family stories about him, his siblings, his parents, his grandparents. We can go back to Michigan, to the land that's still in the family that my grandpa was born on, the house he was born in. We can go back to the house his dad was born in. All of it's still in the family to this day. So I have this huge part of me, right? So that's a quarter of me. That's my grandpa, built out, beautiful. I can take you back to Germany. We have family who's gone back to where our family's from in Germany. On my dad's side, I know his mom. Well, she passed before I was born.
Right.
I knew his siblings. I have maybe 1 or 2 pictures of his mom, maybe 1 or 2 pictures of him when he's little. That's kind of it. For African American genealogy, if you can say you found ancestors who were born in the early 1800s, you've done a lot. That's a huge accomplishment. And on my mom's side, that's nothing. That's nothing. So, what I always tell people, whether they are white, whether they are Black, whether they have any connection to enslavement, possibly in their tree, the white ancestors are holding the records.
And so one of the things that I think is important for white women to unlearn is that there's this message that they don't have what it takes to do what needs to be done, right? That wasn't the message of the early 70s, right? That's the message now.
Yes.
And we must take responsibility for pushing that message on you. And I've bumped up against a lot of white women that collude with the anger, rage, and righteousness that Black women have. And I need that to stop. I need them to be able to stand in their own power. That's what white women need to be able to do. Black women have figured that out. And so they perhaps have developed an oversense of power. And so I think that what is necessary is that white women have to begin to stand in their power. And I think that it can in some ways be terrifying, and in some ways can cut off the ways in which they relate to each other. Yeah. So that's probably what I would say, is that I need white women to begin to unlearn this fear-based way of shrinking. And to begin to amplify this way in which they have the strength, the tenacity, and the courage to show up. But they have to be given the opportunity to do that. This program provides that.
Is the opportunity. This is the practice.
This is the practice, right? Because you don't know you have it until you have to demonstrate it.
Our culture, patriarchal culture, is to keep us small and safe. Don't forget safe.
Right.
And silent.
Right.
It's a conspiracy of silence, of don't make waves, be still, be quiet, and don't make waves.
Right.
And we're so afraid of not doing it perfectly or right or saying it right. And the Black culture, we'll just call it what it is. They just call it out, call you out, call you in, right? And we're hypersensitive, but we are also, to me, the foundational thing is for women of privilege, whether it's whatever your privilege is, we all have some kind. Mine happens to be the color of my skin.
Right.
To use that privilege for good.
Right.
There's your reparation. You want to make a reparation in your life? You want to quit feeling shame and guilt for what your forefathers did? Here you go. Step up.
Right.
If one voice evolving is the open door, then the invitation to anyone who's ready, the cove, is what's behind it. The sanctuary. The place where you can say the thing you've never said out loud. And someone says, yeah, I know. Me too. Keep going. The Cove exists because the love that started this platform needed a home. Chapter 4, Going Deeper. The fourth word was above. 100 episodes does something to a person, if they let it. Kim let it. She didn't armor up and keep the show at arm's length. She brought herself into it. Her recovery, her conditioning, her reckoning with race and patriarchy and the silence that gets passed down through generations like an heirloom nobody asked for. Season 4 was the heaviest lifting. Looking at the systems from above, including the ones she benefited from without knowing it. That's not comfortable work, but it's the most necessary kind. Finally, with these final clips, you'll see why we're excited about Wave 2. Enjoy.
I was telling my mom that, in order to have any kind of true success, you have to start from the inside out. And it kind of went back to some of the principles that my dad was teaching me along the way, and that was, character and money go hand in hand, and just these principles of um, having good character, not just having a good personality, but being in tune with who you are. And I was able to take the lessons that my dad passed on and just kind of expound on them through my own lived experience. And one of the sole ingredients that I was seeing is that from my own experience is once you're misaligned in the inside, it robs you of your joy. But when you begin to find alignment within yourself, you find
Moment
peace.
of realizing the dream life doesn't come in the future. The dream life is now. And am I living now how I would love, like if I didn't wake up tomorrow, would today feel like I satisfied? And I wasn't. I was very much just hustling, grinding in so many different ways. And I wanted to be home with my kids like that.
But I think there is so much to be known as far as like supporting those who may look a little different or have different backgrounds. The fact that you even recognize this though, and you're willing to deconstruct it, I think it's a great step towards humanity.
What do you do when someone with your skin color comes in with white supremacy?
Absolutely.
Because we're all steeped in the same tea here.
Absolutely. In what context do you mean, in therapy or just in general?
Yeah, in therapy, when they're in therapy and you see that this thread of white privilege runs, because I had a hard awareness not long ago because I assumed that white privilege was restricted to white skin, and I was wrong.
Like internalized.
Internalized,
It also shows to me the monster in our society and how everything is connected.
Well, and how it's a survival skill, because I see it in women all the time in work too. Do I go along to get along at this table, or do I challenge the white male authority figure here? And do I risk my feeding my children over, my authentic voice? And the choices we make at 30 are different than the choices we will make at 60.
That imposter syndrome is a misidentification of the impact of competency checking on white women. And competency checking is the ways in which you are required to prove your knowledge and skills and ability at a higher, harder level. And what I point out in the book is that the two white women who came up with this idea of imposter syndrome or imposter phenomenon, as they first called it in the early 70s, they were doing research. They were therapists, psychotherapists. I think at least one of them was. They had therapy groups of white women. They, as sometimes white women did then and now tend to do, they did not see themselves as part of a collective civil rights struggle. And so when they were identifying the problems the women were having at work, they were reporting these problems as if they were originating from the women. In other words, the women felt insecure. The women felt they had to work harder. The women felt, and I read that and I'm like, this doesn't make any sense.
I mean, I think that that's one of the biggest parts of wellness that we forget. It's like we start on the outside and we forget about the inside.
And herein lies where life gets so messy, is that I hear people say in the adoption world the same things I hear the people say in the biological world. I always knew I didn't belong to my parents. There was something different. Well, what teenager doesn't feel like they belong to their parents? Right. Something different. So I am open-minded enough to accept that when we're in the adoption community and adoptee community, and we're thinking from our adoptive perspectives, that is valid and it is true. It does, and for us, it is because we're adopted, and that's the truth. But that doesn't mean people who aren't adopted don't experience very similar things.
If we look historically, we really haven't had that reckoning. And we really haven't had, I don't know. It's really distressing that we have made it okay to not confront facts, history, journalism, truth telling. Really, I think some basic things that are so important for a culture and a society to move forward. A certain kind of before you have the reconciliation, you have to have the truth, right? It's called truth and reconciliation. And yeah, so my hope is that, you know what, life is long. We always talk about how life is short, but you know, I still have hope because I think there's plenty of people like yourself, Kim, and others that this is still important. And I don't really believe that DEI is dead. I think it's bruised.
Some of this just leaves me speechless.
Yeah.
You talked, one of the stories you gave when you spoke about the Holocaust, and in the face of Holocaust deniers and all other things today, was about the folks who, the agents who had their property on the same site as the crematoriums on the hill, and about the rich neighbor lady who wanted them to just tone it down. Can you tell some of that? Because
So we ended up going, it was probably about a 2-week trip, and about 30 educators. And we ended up going to different parts of Austria, Poland, and we actually went to Rome to learn about the role of the Vatican in the Holocaust. But so we were in Austria, and one of the title of our trip was Power of Place. And so we had gone to one of the camps, Mauthausen, and it was sort of this discussion we had about perspective, being a someone who is going to speak out about it, someone who is going to sit back and let it happen, and then the perpetrators who are actually doing it, and then the victims. And we went, and in Mauthausen, it was used as a quarry, a rock quarry, so forced labor. And this woman, and the house is still there, and the family still owns a house, had written in that you know, it was upsetting for her being in her house to see the quarry, and like she knew people were being murdered, but could it maybe not happen as out in the open? And it was this interesting letter because it was given to us first, and so you're sort of like, okay, well, she's speaking out a little bit. She's writing the police officer, you know, so maybe she's toning it down because she's a little scared about, you know, what if the Gestapo get pulled in? So you're trying to rationalize, like, maybe there's a little good behind it. And then we get another letter that was written from her son that 2 of the prisoners from Mauthausen had escaped and actually fled to her house. And she, you know, called the police on them, and then just said, I whatever you do with them, just don't do it in my front yard.
And what came out on the other side of all that climbing? Someone who is above the need to apologize for her taking up space, above the beige, above the go along to get along. Kim carries 2 absolutes into everything she builds from here. Talk to people, not about them, and assume good intent until they show you otherwise. That's not naivety. That's the discipline of a woman who has decided connection is more powerful than contempt. That's the woman walking into Wave 2. We didn't start with a mission. We found it by living it out loud, season by season. Joy first, then resilience, then a reckoning with the systems and the heritage underneath it all. Now we go deeper than ever. 4 chapters carried us here. You've heard about them. Move, Love, The Cove, and Above. And what's coming next, Wave 2, was built inside every one of them. Thank you for joining us. For information about One Voice Evolving, The Cove, or any of the services that Kim provides, visit onevoiceevolving.com.